Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 135 with Dr. Sara Gottfried. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when she shares the alternatives to the pill, how to get our hormones back on track, and how we are not our genes and what we can do to turn our genes on and off. Yep, it is possible. But there is so much more wisdom, inspiration, and knowledge that you get in the full episode. So, to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/135 right now. Sara, it is so great to have you on the show. Can you tell us about your story and how you got to where you are today, doing the wonderful work that you do with women today?
Yeah, well, I would say my story first began when I was in my mid-30s. And I was a working mother. I had one daughter, and I now have two, but one at the time. And I was working as a kind of a conventional obstetrician gynecologist. So I was delivering babies at night. I was taking out, doing hysterectomies, taking out ovaries during the day. And I just really hit a wall. So a lot of it was that I just was burned out. I had premenstrual syndrome. I did not want to have sex with my husband. I was too tired to work out. And I had this epiphany because I went to my primary care doctor with my symptoms, kind of my long list of symptoms. And I said, I've got PMS. I've got this weight that I can't lose after having a baby. I'm struggling. I feel way too young to feel so old. What do you got for me? And this poor guy, this internist that I went to see, suggested that I go on an antidepressant. And I think that's what a lot of women hear. He also suggested that I go on a birth control pill because in his view, that solves every hormonal problem that a woman has. And then he also wrote on a whiteboard, and this is what really stung. He wrote on a whiteboard, exercise more plus eat less equals thinner Sara. And so I just sat there in his office kind of stunned. And then I left his office and realized that, wow, millions of women are being told this very same thing. I wasn't depressed. I didn't need a birth control pill. I didn't need to exercise more. I thought that my problem was hormonal. And so that got me to leave his office, go to the lab, and kind of apply that medical training that I had to my own physiology. And that was my problem. My hormones were totally out of whack. My cortisol was 3 times what it should have been, which is the main stress hormone. My estrogen was way high. I didn't have enough progesterone. Progesterone's the thing that really soothes women and helps us, calm down at the end of the day. And my thyroid was slow, mostly as a result of these other things. So that's what got me started on this path, Melissa, of just realizing that my hormones were out of whack. And most doctors that you see have no idea how to help that problem.
This is not an uncommon story, I feel like I hear this almost daily. I want to hear, how can we be at home in our own body? Because I know that there's so many women probably listening to this that do not feel inner peace and contentment in their own skin. How do we get to that place of love, respect, and gratitude within our own body? How do we do it?
Well, first, I just want to honor you for what you've shared because it gives me chills, what you described with your friend and with that realization that you had, the epiphany that you had. And that experience, I think all of us have it at some point where we look back over our shoulder. For you, it was during your 20s and during your teens, where you look at that, kind of obsessive drive to fix, change, and improve your body. I think those were your words. There's so much that drives us to that point. There's cultural biases, there's social issues, there's financial issues that kind of drive us to that place. So I don't have a simple answer for how it is that you come home to your body, but I think it starts with realizing that you're at a surrender point. So I had that surrender point when I was in my mid-30s. I've had many other surrender points. You had that surrender point when you witnessed the loss of your dear friend. But I think we have to get to that place of kind of realizing how much pain that we're in and not medicating it, with the latest makeup, the latest fine wine, or whatever your drug of choice is. I think for me, the first part of getting to that place of being at home in your body is to have your hormones back in balance. And just as I described with my primary care doctor, I don't feel that conventional medicine has any answers for us here. In fact, I think they fail us completely. And so this has to be a place where we have to reclaim our bodies, reclaim our power, and step into that grace of looking at our hormonal balance, acknowledging where things are not quite where they could be, and then getting them back into a place of homeostasis. So that's a really simple answer. The longer version is a little more complex, but I think that's a place where you set yourself up for the kind of gratitude, grace, love that you're describing.
So, firstly, can you tell us what are some of the things that are causing our hormones to go crazy and out of whack? And secondly, what can we do to balance them naturally?
Yeah. So I practice functional medicine, which is the root cause analysis that you alluded to. It's kind of a systems biology. It's a way of looking at symptoms, getting to the root of them, and then addressing them. So with root cause analysis, when it comes to hormonal imbalance, what I typically find are the most common root causes are the way that you eat, move, think, and supplement. So the food that you're eating, that can either get your hormones into better balance or the opposite. Stress, endocrine disruptors, kind of what you get exposed to, sleep, not just the quantity, but the quality of your sleep. Are you getting 90 minutes of deep sleep every night, for instance? Movement, exercise, love, purpose. And then I don't think that you can correct your hormones with a pill. And I also don't think that you can fix every hormonal imbalance with a supplement, but sometimes a supplement can be a very helpful bridge to a place of better hormonal harmony. So those are kind of the basic causes that I think about. And in terms of how to fix them, when I wrote my first book, The Hormone Cure, I took the system that I used for balancing women's hormones, what I used to balance my own hormones, and then what I used on the next 15 to 20,000 women that I worked with. And it's a really simple kind of 3-step progressive protocol where you start first with lifestyle redesign. So what are the foods that you're putting in your mouth? How much are you drinking? Are you drinking filtered water that doesn't have lead and other toxins in it? Are you drinking the right dose of alcohol for you? For some people, it's none. For other people, they can have, a glass of organic red wine a couple times a week and it doesn't cause problems. So the first step is lifestyle redesign. And that includes exercise. Like with PMS, premenstrual syndrome, we know that exercising 4 times a week is the minimum dose to be able to modulate the hormonal imbalances of PMS. So that's the kind of lifestyle redesign of step 1 of this protocol. The second step is botanical therapies. So these are herbal treatments, things like chasteberry for women who have premenstrual syndrome, or for people who have depression. St. John's wort is a very effective herbal therapy. And then the third step is bioidentical hormones.
Can you explain that?
With bioidenticals?
Yeah, can you explain to our listeners what that is?
Yes. So bioidentical hormones are hormones that are exactly the same as what your body has always made. So I think the easiest thing is to give a couple of examples. So for instance, if I have a patient who's in her 40s who suddenly stops sleeping, she's tried, the over-the-counter usual suspects. She's tried melatonin. She's tried taking Benadryl, which you don't want to do because that actually is associated with dementia. And nothing seems to be helping. What I often do in that situation is I look at how she's producing progesterone. And for a woman in her 40s, what typically happens as you start to run out of ripe eggs is that you don't make as much progesterone. So progesterone is often low. And then you have a case of estrogen dominance where you've got estrogen and progesterone not in the right ratio. I think of them kind of like tango partners, and you don't want one to dominate. You want this really good dance between the two hormones. So for women in her 40s with low progesterone, often what I'll do is make the lifestyle changes that help her with progesterone, such as taking more vitamin C. So even a dose of 1,000 milligrams has been shown to raise your body's internal production of progesterone. If that doesn't work, we move on to something like chasteberry, which also raises your body's progesterone levels. But if that doesn't work, typically after 4 to 6 weeks, what we do is we move on to bioidentical progesterone. So in the US, what we use is something called prometrium, micronized progesterone. It's exactly the same as what your ovaries make, but in your 40s, you start to make less of it. And this is one of the most effective treatments for sleep for women who are in their 40s and 50s. So that's an example of bioidenticals. The ones that kind of get the most press are the ones that are used in perimenopause and menopause for women who are having hot flashes and night sweats and other symptoms of menopause, vasomotor symptoms.
I personally have a regular period, and so I do charting, and that works for me. But I would really love to hear what your advice would be for those women who potentially want to come off the pill but don't want to fall pregnant right now.
Yeah, this is such a good topic. So I'm a big fan of natural family planning. I think that's, the charting that you described is a really great way to get back in touch with your body, to be in that conversation that we talked about at the beginning. I think what happens for so many of us, especially overachieving women, is that we get out of that conversation with our body. And I love techniques like natural family planning and charting because it gets you back into that conversation. And so that's certainly a very effective method. I also like barrier methods, condoms, diaphragm. I don't know if in Australia you also have the cervical cap, but that can be very effective. I'm a big fan of the intrauterine device. A lot of people are scared of it because of one bad IUD that came out in the 1970s called the Dalcon Shield that was taken off the market. It is no longer an option. And so the current IUDs that people use are very effective. I prefer the copper IUD to the progesterone secreting IUD, or progestin, which is a fake progesterone. I don't like the Mirena IUD because about 10 to 20% of women who use it have symptoms of excess synthetic progesterone. So I'm not a big fan of that. So I would say IUDs, barrier methods, and especially the natural family planning.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now let's talk about genes for a minute, because some people believe that your genes you are born with are the genes that you've got, but you can actually turn your genes on and off. So how do we do that? And how do we turn the good ones on?
Yeah, when I went through medical school, which was 25 plus years ago, I was taught that your genes are your destiny. And we've really learned in the past 25 years that that's not the case, that you can turn your genes on and off, as you described, at your discretion, especially with the way that you eat, move, think, and supplement. So the way that you do it is through those small daily choices that you're making every day. Deciding what you have for breakfast, deciding what you put on your fork, deciding the architecture of your day, like how you calendar yourself, deciding the people that you surround yourself with. It's said that you're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And you want those 5 people to be really influential, the type that turn on your good genes, that get your oxytocin running, that hormone of love and bonding, the kind of people that connect you to your mission and purpose and, help you really connect to your vision. So there's a lot of ways of turning on the good genes, turning off the bad genes. If I had to give just one recommendation, I would probably say focus on your sleep. Sleep is as close to a panacea as we have. And if you want to avoid falling down a hormonal flight of stairs, sleep is your best bet. And a lot of people say, well, okay, that's fine. I'm not a good sleeper. I've never been a good sleeper. How am I supposed to improve it? And I think the first step to improving your sleep is to track it. So I use a couple of trackers. I have a Fitbit that tracks my deep, light, and REM sleep every night. And I think that that's a very powerful way to kind of make sure that you're getting the type of restorative sleep that you need that will turn on your good genes and turn off your bad genes. There's this whole system called the glymphatic system. So not lymphatic, but glymphatic with a G, that removes debris and toxins from the brain when you're sleeping at night. And it works a little better if you sleep on your right side. So for the people who sleep on their back or on their tummies, that's not as good for detoxification. You definitely want to be sleeping on your side.
And sleep is anti-aging. You know, a lot of people, when you say the words anti-aging, I personally prefer to use longevity, because when, you know, we say anti-aging, a lot of people think of those super expensive toxic creams that they see on TV commercials that they must use around their eyes to stop their wisdom lines. I don't call them wrinkles, I call them wisdom lines. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about longevity and being 110 and still backbending and headstanding with your great-grandchildren. And sleep is one of the best things for anti-aging and longevity. So we've just got to really, and for your hormones and for everything, isn't it?
What we know in terms of longevity is that you want to be getting 7 to 8.5 hours of sleep every night. And when I tell this to patients in my practice, they often will say to me, no, you don't understand. I do just fine with 6 hours. And the truth is, only about 3% of the population does well with less than 7 hours of sleep every night. And you also don't want to be the kind of person who has what's called social jet lag, where you have a different amount of sleep during the week versus what you have on the weekend. So you can't make it up on the weekend. And similarly, you can't skimp on the weekend and then make it up during the week. You have to have consistency with your sleep practice. So the goal is 7 to 8.5 hours at night. And I have to say, you know, when people talk about anti-aging, what a lot of my patients and folks I work with online think about is Botox and fillers. And I have to say, sleep is better than any Botox or fillers. Like it is the best plastic surgery that you could possibly get.
And it's free.
And it's free.